Morning everyone. Today we are going to be looking at the Roman world. This is because at the start of year 7 we begin with a unit called Conquest and Challenge, where we look at how various groups invaded and eventually settled in England prior to 1066. The first thing we are going to do today is take a good look at the source on the slide. I'm going to give you all about 2 minutes. I would like you to look at the source and think, what can you see? Is there anything surprising or unusual about this picture? What questions you would like to ask? And what extra information you might need to explain exactly what is happening in this picture. I'm going to give you a minute or so to consider those questions before I reveal what this source actually is. So if you didn't guess already, this source is a dog. You can see it's a dog because you can see its mouth, its ears, and you can see where its collar used to be around its neck. Historians know that this dog belonged to a laundry maker. It was found chained to a wooden stake in his house. When it died, it was trying to chew its way through the chain, which was attached to his collar. So do you think historians could have got all of this information just from the remains of this dog? Well, no. If you just received this dog, you don't know where it came from, you don't know where it was, you don't know what objects were around it. Historians need to use as much evidence as possible to understand historical sources like this dog. The dog that I've just shown you was found on the foothills of Pompeii. So Pompeii was a Roman town in the Bay of Naples, 240 kilometers south of Rome, which is about a day's ride away. Many rich Romans owned homes on this bay. Others were farmers growing wine and wheat in the lush green fields that rose up the slopes of Vesuvius. In 79 AD, Pompeii was a Roman town of about 20,000 people. It was mostly famous in the Roman world for its garum sauce, which was the innards of fish mixed with salt and left to ferment in the sun for 2 months, and for its wine. Although the Roman writer Pliny the Elder warned against it, saying it gave people terrible hangovers. In many ways, it was a typical Roman town, although there have been some troubling portents in recent years. So what was about to happen? Well, on the 24th of August, 79 AD, day began as every other morning, but all that was soon to change. A young Roman, Pliny the Younger, later wrote a letter describing the events that followed. I'm now going to read you the account of Pliny the Younger. As I read it, I would like you to sketch a picture of how you imagine the scene to have looked. What was going on in Pompeii on the 24th of August 79 AD. You can use a whole page in your book, and you can add pictures of people into your image as well. So get a pencil at the ready, and I will begin to read to you. Pliny was at Misenum, working as head of the fleet on the 24th of August. Between 2 and 3 in the afternoon, my mother pointed out a cloud of unusual size and appearance. He'd had a hot bath, then a cold bath, and was relaxing after dinner with his books. He called for his shoes and climbed up to where he could get the best view of the cloud. The cloud was rising from a mountain. We couldn't tell which, but afterwards we learned that it was Vesuvius. I can best describe its shape by comparing it to a pine tree. It rose into the sky on a very long trunk, from which spread some branches. Some of the clouds was white, and other parts they were dark patches of dirt and ash. The sight of it made my uncle determined to see it from up close. He ordered a boat and he offered to take me along, but I preferred to study. He had set me a writing exercise. As he was leaving the house, he brought a letter from Tacitus's wife, Rectina. She was afraid of the danger. Her villa was at the foot of Vesuvius. There was no way out except by boat. She begged him to get her away. He changed his plans. He set out in a big boat. Ash was falling into the ships now, darker and denser the closer they went. Now it was bits of pumice and rocks that were blackened and burned and shattered by the fire. Rocks from the volcano blocked the shore. He paused for a moment, wondering whether to turn back. Fortune helps the brave, he said. About on the other side of the bay, formed by the gradually curving shore, Pompeii had loaded up his ships. He planned to leave as soon as the wind let up. That very wind carried my uncle right in. He hugged Pompeii. It gave him comfort and courage. In order to show he wasn't afraid, he went to the baths. He bathed and dined. Meanwhile, broad sheets of flame were lighting up parts of Vesuvius. To relieve people's fear, my uncle claimed that the flames came from the deserted homes of farmers who had left in a panic with their fires still alight. Then he rested. People said he slept. People who passed by his door heard his snores. They were very loud because he was a very heavy man. The ground outside his room rose very high with the mixtures of ash and stones. If he'd spent any more time there, escape would have been impossible. He got up and came out. He met Pompeii and the others who were unable to sleep. They talked about what to do, whether to remain under cover or to try the open air. The buildings were being shaken by earthquakes. They were sliding this way and that. Outside, there was a danger from the rocks that were coming down. Weighing the danger, they chose the outdoors. They tied pillows on tops of their heads as protection against a shower of rocks. It was daylight now elsewhere in the world, but the darkness was darker and thicker than any night. But they had torches and other lights. They decided to go down to the shore to see from close up if they could escape by sea. But it remained as rough as before. Resting in the shade of a sail, he drank cold water. Then came a smell of sulphur. Then came the flames themselves. Some tried to run away. Supported by two small slaves, he stood up. He collapsed. His breathing was made difficult by the dusty air. His insides simply shut down. When daylight came 2 days after he died, his body was found untouched, unharmed, in the clothing that he'd had on. He looked more asleep than dead. very clear from Pliny the Younger's account that what our dog that we saw at the beginning of the lesson was trying to escape was the lava and fire of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii. Pompeii is significant to historians for multiple reasons. The first is that it led to the preservation of the site, the largest Roman ruins that are in complete tact, and it also reveals a lot about Roman lives in general. Using what I've just read to you, I would like you to complete the table on the slide. In the first column, I would like you to write what Pliny taught us about the eruption. So what actually happened in August 79 AD. I then want you to do a bit of investigation and think, what does the eruption actually tell us about the Romans themselves? For example, I learned from reading that Romans had slaves. I'd like you to spend about 10 minutes looking at your picture, listening to the story again, and recording what Pliny taught us about the eruption and what it reveals about the Romans in general. Once you've done that, I would like you to write a hypothesis as to how the Romans, when they arrive in Britain, could change Britain. You should spend between 10 to 15 minutes doing this. Thank you, Year 7. I look forward to seeing you all in September.